Hello and welcome to Redesign Your Life Today. I'm your host, Daniel Kobryner, a high-energy, heart-centered life and business coach, international motivational speaker, and passionate believer that transformation is always possible, no matter your age or your story. This podcast is a space for you, especially over 40, who feel stuck, off track, or disconnected from who you really are. If you've ever thought there has to be more in life than that, you're in the right place. Here, we explore how to break through fear, procrastination, self-doubt, and reconnect with your purpose, your power, and your truth. You'll hear inspiring conversations with heart-centered guests who have experienced real transformation and who now live with intention, freedom, and alignment. This is not about surface level change, it's about radical reconnection with your authentic self. It's about designing a life that doesn't just look good from the outside, but feels right in the inside. Every episode is an invitation to show up more fully, think more expansively, and take soul-aligned steps towards the life you know is waiting for you. So thank you, everybody, for being there. Let's take a big breath together, open our hearts, and step forward. Because your life is not set in stone. You can redesign it starting right now. And let me introduce our wonderful guest today. I've got an amazing guest. It's Chris Waskow. I'm so happy to have Chris with us today. And so Chris is an energy healer. She's a spiritual counselor and a psychic medium devoted helping individuals heal and reconnect with their true selves. With a deep specializations in trauma recovery, Chris supports old souls and survivors of narcissistic abuse in healing across emotional, spiritual, and nervous systems level. Through intuitive insight, energy balancing, and somatic integration, she creates a compassionate space for uncovering soul lessons, restoring inner harmony, and reclaiming personal power. So again, a very warm welcome, Chris. And what to say, we had the other day first conversation, and this was truly amazing. And
Yeah.
so happy to have you on board. So first, Chris, I introduced you, but perhaps you want to take us a little through your story,
Yeah, of course.
information, and it would be great to hear that.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure. My story is certainly surprising, even to myself. My background is in business. So if you would have told me that I would have been a psychic medium, especially an energy healer and a spiritual counselor, I think I would have surprised myself more than most. But my journey led me here because I had to overcome some rather intense trauma. I was raised by two narcissists on different sides of the spectrum. And of course, growing up, I had no idea. That was just my version of normal. And there was a lot of abuse, physical, mental, and emotional abuse. And it took me a long time to really see it. I often felt I was the problem. And at one point, it was a moment of having enough of the abuse, enough of the threats of violence. And I made a very difficult decision to cut off my parents. And the reason I did this was to protect my family because it was becoming a threat. And The first thing I felt is just I wanted to feel better. I was very anxious. I was scared, when being raised in that kind of environment where I was often punished physically. So, my nervous system was trained to anticipate what was going to come. How do I need to hide or protect myself? And so my first steps were to really work on healing that element of fear, of fearing like the boogeyman showing up out of nowhere. In doing these things for myself, it took some time, but I started to grow. I started to evolve. And then, I was just, everything was changing for me, my mind, my body, my spirit. And it awakened me, it opened me to spirit and all the things that I realized I had always been able to do over time. I had only seen little bits and pieces of over the years because they were all muted by trauma. So the more I healed my trauma, the more it awakened my gifts. And suddenly I would be having conversations with people and I would see spirits in my mind's eye right over their shoulder. And I didn't know what was happening. It was exciting, but it was also a little jarring because then I was like, are they going to start just waking me up at night? I didn't know what they were going to do, but I just realized I had to learn how to communicate. And that was the next step on that journey. And over time, I recognized although I like working with spirit, I really prefer to work with the living and working with people that have dealt with trauma, severe narcissism, childhood trauma. I'm a self-proclaimed expert in because of everything I've experienced, and certainly an expert in narcissism and recognizing the patterns and the spectrum and how to help people protect themselves, especially when they're currently in those environments or married to one. So it's been quite a journey, but I'm grateful.
Wow, what a story. Thank you so much for sharing. Just for our listeners to understand, because, not everybody knows really that, what are the traits of narcissists, if you can explain a little bit, and then how can we heal from, from narcissist parents or other people?
Well, it's certainly a process, the healing. I think anyone's healing journey is a process. But as far as recognizing what you're dealing with when it comes to a narcissist, is recognizing that it is a spectrum. Most people don't talk about that because, you talk about your covert narcissist, your overt narcissist, but it's an entire spectrum that someone could be falling into, ranging from just, slight elements of manipulation to strong elements of having sociopathic tendencies. So, it's when we recognize these traits. So, a covert narcissist is more manipulative. They like to utilize emotions to, oh, I'm sorry, I'm such a terrible mother, or I can never do right by you. Those kinds of little digs that it's not meant to be an attack, but it is a form of manipulation. They also like to use their health, like, oh, I went to the doctor today and I'm really concerned about something happening. So again, this is part of the manipulation. They want you to feel bad, so you'll care for them and be there. Because if you don't show that you are willing to step up, then that they like to use that against you, that you're not a good person. Because over time, they have already conditioned you to believe you are not a good person. So you fall for all of it. And it takes, because I was raised in that environment, I didn't know better. I just believed it was me and I was the problem. And this is not to suggest that my parents are the problem. Narcissism all comes from wounds. And these are generational patterns that get passed on until someone decides enough is enough. We're all more used to the overt narcissist because that's kind of the textbook definition, the one that has that grandiose, egotistical, dramatic kind of nature. That's my father. Everyone had to bow down to him, to cater to him. My mother became a compulsive liar because it was out of protecting ourselves from his reactions, because he would have rather violent, volatile reactions. So that kind of gives you an idea, a little bit of the spectrum. So, how to heal? One, first and foremost, recognize what your trauma responses are. And that's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Most people will fall into one or two of those. It's more commonly two. And when you recognize your patterns, then you recognize your behaviors, because your behaviors then become a pattern. And they're all adaptive. You have used these to adapt to an environment for survival. You know, if you're a child that has been in this kind of situation, a child doesn't look at their parents like, oh, my parents are wrong and they need help. They look at themselves. So they literally are adapting their nervous system, their behaviors, and their attitude to an environment in order to survive, in order to feel loved and accepted. And those type of parents often will utilize that as a form of control. And that's why it can become more difficult as the child gets older. So I tend to work, not, I mean, I work mostly with adults, but the teens I get are, I would say the age group is around 11 to 16,
Mhm.
where I will get the child and their parent, and it's usually the narcissism is somewhere in there. I fully applaud a lot of people coming forward, recognizing they have some narcissistic tendencies, but usually they're married to one or their parent was one and they have fleas. So they're not necessarily a textbook narcissist, but they recognize they have the tendencies because they didn't know any better. So I help them heal those elements, recognizing the trauma responses. I can also scan the energy body. When I say energy body, that's the aura and the chakras, to see where
Mhm.
trauma has hit people in their system. So I will feel into that. And if the body isn't going to show it, I will then feel it, because sometimes it just depends on how the person's body or energy body reveals the information. So I help them work with those areas of their body to help them become stronger, more connected to themselves, because this kind of trauma creates a bit of a separation in one's energy. And they're not grounded, they're not connected to themselves. And in order to get their power back, I help them reunite their energy.
Wow, thank you so much, Chris. So powerful. And when you said, you spoke about, scanning the the energy again. Can you go a little further into, what are the techniques? How did you learn that? And so how can you apply this with people?
Well, anyone that has been raised by a narcissistic parent, it probably can already sense a lot in somebody's energy, because one of my adaptations was I needed to anticipate, was my father in a violent mood or not? Because I
Mhm.
grew up very scared of him. And so my nervous system became hardwired to be able to read people's energy. I didn't realize that until I started to really heal and recognize that I essentially could just read anybody's energy. So learning more about the chakras and being able to climb in. So when I work with a client, I will attach my chakra system to theirs. Anytime we meet people, we always are attaching via cords, whether it's an acquaintance, a one-time meeting, or someone you are intimate with, there's always cords. So automatically, when someone chooses to be a client of mine, there's automatically a cord that allows me entrance into their energy. That sometimes can make people a little nervous because they wonder, am I going to see everything? The energy body is always very secure in what you are comfortable revealing. And I will always respect energetic boundaries. So if I feel something like, okay, there's a big trauma there, I recognize there's a trauma there, but I'm not going to climb past it because I'm already feeling there's a bit of a barrier, which means that person is trying to protect that part of their energy. So it's really being able to recognize that and to read it. And I think because I've been doing it for so long now, it's just kind of a second nature to me. So when I do it and I find things, or, there, and it's not even so much finding things, it's just things are revealed, and I trust what I see and I trust the feelings that are given. And then the clients are always like, oh my gosh, how do you know that? There's no way. And which again is a lot of why I like working with the living, and helping people actively heal. It's pretty incredible.
Absolutely. And you were talking about chakras. Are there some particular chakras where these traumas reside?
That's a great question. So I work predominantly with the seven main chakras, the ones that
Yes.
we're used to seeing on pictures. And someone that's dealt with narcissistic abuse, I would say most commonly I will see wounds in the throat chakra because they haven't been able to speak up or they've been criticized for speaking up too much.
Mhm.
The heart chakra because it's been severely wounded by people they thought loved them. And the solar plexus, which is your chakra of personal power, because a lot of people, when they're in those kinds of relationships, they really struggle to feel powerful and to really have a sense of who they are.
Okay. And you said something, you obviously being when you were raised, there was always this, fear. And so would the term hyper-vigilant be appropriate in
Yes,
terms of, because
absolutely.
even when we talk about saboteurs, for instance, so yes, you would say that, yeah,
100%. Yes, that's spot on.
exactly. And really, so trying to anticipate. Actually, I've got goosebumps when when I listen. I'm saying that because I feel,
Yeah,
this, it's fears and you were saying that you could see these fears as well in your mother, if I understand properly. So with regard to your father, so obviously as a child, in the first 7 years of your life, what you do, I think you take everything in without a filter, isn't it? Like,
exactly.
like I heard people are in or children are in a what theta brainwave where everything comes in and you don't question. For you, it's kind this is how it is in life, isn't it?
Exactly. We
Yeah.
just it's the adaptation style. We don't question. We just receive. We are huge receptors at that point, and that's why a lot of times as children come more into themselves, they're considered more challenging. But are they more challenging or are they just trying to find who they are? I feel that oftentimes that's not really looked at.
Mm, okay, this is a very very good point. And when you start your well healing journey, I mean, obviously, when you are raised in an environment like this, perhaps even I don't know, but even when you meet people, for instance, you meet men, and very often people say, "Oh, for a girl, it would be, the father would be an example, or for a boy, a mother would be example." Did it kind of play a role, and did you manage to get over this trauma? I, I don't know.
I feel for me, it's such a good question. I really appreciate this question because I feel that I don't go along with the quote unquote norm when it comes to this because somebody that was raised the way I was, it is more common to marry somebody like that.
Okay.
And while I mean, I've been married to my husband for a very long time. We're college sweethearts. I'm very grateful for him. He is nothing like my parents. And he really taught me love. So I would say, I said, I feel like the universe gave you to me as a, you know what, she's had enough. Let's just give her a break. That was what I would say in the beginning. But then over time, I recognized his parents are very narcissistic, but not like mine. Mine are so intense. His are more covert. So it was harder to see, and they weren't a physical risk to my children. So again, you can't help but see like, okay, they have to worry about my father being alone with my kids, and we'd never allow it. But whereas with his parents, we would be more fearful of them being alone with our children because of like neglect, like for example, my mother-in-law would have stories of how my husband almost drowned because she was in the house while he was outside in the pool, and how she yanked him out by his hair. And that would happen more than once. So when they would want to have our kids for like sleepovers, I was like, no,
No, exactly,
no.
exactly.
Uh, so I feel like the whole aspect of when we talk energetically of like attracts like, there's narcissism in both of our upbringings. So it brought us together, but it wasn't in a way that it could have been damaging for us, but we chose to heal from it. And we chose each other. We chose each other. That was really it. I mean, both of our parents have looked at each of us. My parents look at him, his parents look at me as the problem that changed their child. When really, because we have been together since we were 19 years old, we didn't so much change but evolve. We grew up. We're not teenagers anymore. And we started becoming more independent and making our own decisions and being our own people. And they didn't like that because they didn't have control anymore. Because we continued to choose each other and we continue to choose our family, the family we've made. So I felt for us that was so incredibly healing and so important. And I value that. It's made our relationship stronger because oftentimes in narcissistic relationships, you deal with enmeshment, where you become so intertwined, especially energetically, with your own family that it could damage your current relationship. And this is why a lot of these types of relationships don't survive because people are constantly going back to mommy and daddy because of that enmeshment. I often question when people are like, oh, but my mother's my best friend. That puts off a red flag for me because your mother shouldn't be your best friend if you're married.
Yeah, yeah.
People do not like that. That's a very triggering statement.
Thank you very much. It's a great statement, of course, yes. And you now we talked the last time, and I think this is one area, which is important for you about souls and particularly old souls. I think and this as well, I think you talked about soul contract. So can you just, elaborate a little on, what's a soul, what's a soul contract, and how, yeah, how do we have this connection with the upper world? I don't know if the question is well formulated, Chris, but
Well, I mean, we could really talk about this forever, I feel, but we are all one, right? We are all connected. We all have this individual aspect of, projected consciousness putting us in these avatars of having a human experience and often a shared human experience. Like right now, you and I are having a shared human experience. This likely would have been contracted somewhere along the way. And oftentimes we look at soul contracts as blueprints, but they're not as concrete as a blueprint you would make for a building. They are flexible and they alter and shift based on choices because we are given free will, and the choices we make will shift and adjust our contracts accordingly. And, this is where a lot of times people will question the idea of destiny. Is it true that when you have a destiny, you're destined for it? So that's become a more debatable topic. And I think as more and more people are awakening, it's become a more exciting topic, really. But when it comes to an old soul, I like to describe this in two ways because it really depends on where someone is at in their growth stage. When it comes to the more simplified version, the ones that a lot of people tend to be more comfortable with if they believe in the idea of reincarnation, is a soul that has lived many lives. And when you kind of now take a more elevated approach to that and recognize that we are all having all of these lives at the exact same time because time is an illusion, it's one that has more experience. So an old soul will have this depth of experience, of knowledge, of intensity to them, an inner deep knowing. So there's often personality traits that come with an old soul. Uh, it's easier to see in a child because the child hasn't been warped by all the stuff that goes on in Earth that can really shield a lot about someone, but you could see it in the eyes. Usually their demeanor, their movements are slower. They're very observant. They take a lot of pause. And sometimes it's in the things they wear. They will wear things that come from a different time and feel very comfortable in it. And they, just will gravitate towards older people. This can vary by birth order. So I say this because, for example, an only child gravitates towards adults because they are used to being around adults. And, but birth order, because a lot of people do ask me this, it can vary. It doesn't mean that if you're a certain order in line that you're not necessarily an old soul. For example, if you've chosen to be the youngest because the youngest, typically speaking, is more immature than an oldest, Doesn't mean the youngest can't be an old soul. Really, that does depend on what they've designed in their own soul contract, because I've seen that vary. But when I really started this work, I started to notice a pattern that when there was an old soul, there was a narcissist somewhere in the family. And if there was a narcissist, there was an old soul somewhere in the family. And that kind of blew my mind. I have yet to see that be disproven. It's come to the point now where I'm kind of like, okay, where's the old soul? Because I've got an arc here. And I'm like, there it is. And it's usually a child. It's pretty amazing. And what I've recognized is, especially now, so many are choosing to break cycles. This is a time of cycle breaking, and it's become rather explosive in nature of people really choosing to break these generational patterns and cycles, whatever it is in their lines, and choosing to do better and to be better.
Okay, thank you. And you see, some people speak about, for instance, in terms of the healing, there are some special, for instance, meditations like, samadhi meditations, where in order to heal, you've got to really go back to your ancestors. How does it resonate with you, Chris? This concept.
I think it's helpful, and but it's not necessary, because I don't want people to think that if they can't connect to their ancestors, or feel that they can't really make that connection however they feel they need to. It's not necessary for healing, because just an individual choosing to heal affects the generational line. It sends a ripple, and it's felt. It's deeply felt, forward and backwards. And when someone really chooses that, and really chooses that every day, and oftentimes too, they're choosing it for their children. So, and that is the strongest way to create a stronger ripple, because when you have two generations actively working to do better, to be better, to make that kind of shift, it, like I said, creates this stronger ripple through time.
Okay. Yeah, I think we were discussing this a little the other day, but I said that I'm studying Kabbalah now, and it's there are a lot of common points. Again, it's very new to me, and perhaps we'll come to this afterwards. But but there's the idea is that the soul, the soul comes back. In a 3D dimension. It's really to correct, some of and to correct and elevate itself.
Yes.
That in this journey, and so. You use the word reincarnation, so which is used as well, and there's this expression of spiritual awakening. And what does it look like? I mean, I experienced something myself, but I would like you to, just to walk us through what is it for people who don't know, and how does it manifest, and what are the various elements of a spiritual awakening?
Well, I believe awakenings, it's not just about having one awakening. I think we can have several awakenings in a lifetime. And it is like, I like to really look at it like an onion. You're peeling back these layers. So oftentimes awakenings start, I feel, and just seeing in my personal experience, seeing with a lot of my clients, is they start more simply with recognizing structures and confinement of structures. So such as like the educational system, the medical system, the government systems, how these are all confined structures, the work system, and how often these are used for control, to control us, to, and I could keep going. I mean, the food system, it's to keep our vibration low. It's
Religions
to keep,
as well, often.
I'm sorry?
Religions.
Religion, yes, yes, exactly. These are all confinements. This is not to say that none of these things are good, but we, like I said, we recognize that we are in these structured systems, and they often are meant to hold us back in ways. Now, that's usually and that's kind of when people are starting to climb down rabbit holes, and they get into a lot of the quote unquote conspiracy theories, and things of the past, and they start to see what's resonating with them. and then they start talking to others about it, and usually are deemed as a little crazy, or they start finding the like-minded of like, yes, I totally agree, and this happened to me too. You know, for me, the first thing for me was the medical system, because I had experiences where I was almost killed twice by the medical system. So that really had an effect on me trusting that system. This is not to suggest that if something happens and I need medical attention, I'm not going to seek it. But it was a big part of my awakening to see, okay, there's more to this, and there's control in this, and there's unnecessary control in this. So I would say that's a big part, and usually the first steps as you're now evolving in your awakening. And mind you too, when these awakenings happen, your chakras are changing, your energy system is changing, and you become more open in your higher chakras. So, you know, like we always talk about the seven main ones, but you have higher, I mean, we have over 100 chakras, but your higher ones, that's where you start connecting to your higher self. You start connecting to angels, to the Akashic records, to galactic beings. This is where you're becoming more expansive. So that's why an awakening doesn't usually start where all of a sudden you're just communicating with galactic beings. You are understanding the confinements that have happening yourself in your own life. So it's just like this kind of evolving process. And then you have elements of the dark night of the soul where you are going through these really hard times and you're feeling very isolated and you're feeling very alone, and you have to really process the trauma and what's held you back, and to allow you to keep going forward. Those are always interesting. And usually those you hope are kind of a one and done, but they usually are not, because like I said, we have so many different levels of awakening. But it does get easier, no less surprising though, because every time I think like, okay, this is probably the most I'm gonna do in this lifetime, then something else happens that nearly blows my mind, and I'm like, okay, I'm never gonna say that again, because I feel like it's you know, the universe hears it and says challenge accepted.
This is, yeah, again, this is very powerful. And I think I shared that, you know, I was brought up in a non-religious environment. And at a given time, a few years ago, during the pandemics, I started listening to people talking about even, you know, the laws of the universe, and, you know, and there were different things there. And again, it was new to me because, you know, I was very much in my head, you know, like overthinker and perfectionist as well. I mean, in a way. But, you know, when I started listening to people about, you know, even astrology and all this, for whatever reason, it started really resonating. You know, first, you know, I have to say, when I went there, first it was on Zoom. Okay, I was curious, you know, but then you start experiencing things. And when people tell you, you know what, that everything is happening for a reason, that coincidences don't exist. And I looked back at my past, and in my past, I had some very strange things happening. And now which I discard, I use the term coincidences, but I brushed it off, you know, it's like, yeah. Now looking back at this, I realized that there were clear signs which they're on my path. And then I choose, you know, you use the word free will, I guess. I use a path. I could have said yes or no to some opportunities. And this had a really big impact on my life. And the more I dived into this, you know, and when I heard about, okay, quantum physics, there's a lot of connections. You know, when I heard this sentence from Nikola Tesla, who said that if you want to understand the secret of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. And the second part of the sentence, and the numbers 3, 6, and 9 as well. But, you know, it kind of struck me. It was like, wow, because I always had this feeling about energy, and, you know, and some people were telling me, oh, you've got a lot of energy. No, I don't know. But you see, and then, you know, and so the, you know, I heard about, you know, the scale of Hawkins of emotions and things. And my take on this is now a lot of things, you know, course, science is there. A lot of things were proven. But my understanding is that it's kind of minuscule in what is in the universe, and that the people who perhaps did the biggest discoveries were people who were open fully to receiving, like vessels. And I just like I wanted to share this, and what's your take on this on these points, Chris?
Yes, I think there are, I mean, Tesla's a good example. Edgar Casey is another one. You had these people that, very tuned in. Einstein even, had a lot of amazing quotes that really resonate. And you're like, yep, they were tapped in. Um, I mean, at the time, Tesla was deemed crazy. Edgar Casey, there would be some elements of back and forth on that. Some people thought he was amazing. Other people just thought he was cheating somehow. That he's, if you don't know who Edgar Casey is, he's one of the most famous psychics. He was kind of considered a prophet back in the day, and he I think anyone who's a psychic medium is always told you got to study Casey, and because he was rather incredible and also very humble, which is, I think, inspiring because a lot of times ego could come into this any kind of work that you're really good at, and he was really good. But yeah, I think that more and more people now are tuning in. They're more awake. There's more and more awakenings happening by the moments, and I think that's incredible. That's why you see so many people just wanting to do great work. They don't even always know what work they're meant to do, but they just feel this call and this want to help others and to help the planet and help animals. And, there's just this call to help that's being answered now in a way that I don't feel it's been answered to the same degree ever before. And I think it's an amazing thing. This isn't to say that terrible things don't happen on this planet, but I believe we are at a time of shift, and it's continued to shift. And there's a lot of shifts in timelines happening constantly. And I love that so many people are more awake and connecting to themselves, connecting to community, and connecting to the earth. It's been quite a ride, and I think we're still just kind of at the early stages. There's so much more to come. I feel it.
And I heard a lot of very similar comments, and that there is this really calling for spirituality, for connection, and frankly, the number of people now reading the Bible hasn't been as as high as now. I mean, people reconnect because a lot people say a lot is there as well. I mean, in the Bible, but obviously, I guess it's depending as well on how you interpret the Bible.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Many levels of interpretation.
Exactly, and universal. And so, Chris, your clients, you were saying that before, you heal people. I mean, obviously living people, but you say as well, some people want perhaps connections with the deceased ones. How can you help people with this?
That's a great question. So actually right now I have stopped doing mediumship readings. I just felt I needed to put a pause on that. I made it more about healing energy, helping people heal. I wouldn't even yes, I guess I call myself an energy healer, but really I'm helping give people the tools to heal and helping guide people. And the kind of people that find me, I think, are already rather evolved individuals. We have pretty amazing sessions. Sometimes we're doing a lot of quantum field kind of work, and we're really climbing into those elements. This isn't just about, my mommy was mean, although it can start that way. But like I said, when we heal trauma, we are healing these energetic layers that open us more deeply to get to that deeper level of connection. So I don't mind mediumship, but I feel there's not as much healing in it. And I guess I connect more with that aspect of wanting to help people heal. And this is not to suggest that people don't heal. I've had some incredible mediumship reads that have blown my mind of, a parent, a spouse, a child coming through that are letting their loved ones know that they are not only okay, but they're happy and they're thriving. Uh, you know, I don't know why this happened to me a lot, but in the beginning, I was often getting clients whose loved ones had taken their own lives. And so really being able to educate on the fact that just because someone has committed suicide does not mean they automatically go to hell. Um, it is not something recommended though, because they're just going to have to come back again. But that was, I think, a big part of it too. And I don't love that. I rather help people know that their loved one is okay if
Mhm.
they've made that choice,
Yeah.
that they're not suffering, but they are going through a different level of, I'll call it school, because they are learning what choices did, meaning they are shown their loved ones mourning them and blaming themselves. And they're shown alternate paths that they have but didn't see while still living. And that gets very challenging for a soul. So they're kind of going through those layers. So like I said, when I was doing a lot of my earlier mediumship, I was getting these readings and I would see these things and I would see them learning these things. And that was really heavy. So it's part of why I guess I prefer to work with the living, because even so, I do work with a lot of heavy things. I work with all kinds of trauma. I feel like the people that find me have been through really difficult things, physical, emotional, sexual abuse, you
Mhm.
name it. And maybe because nothing really surprises me, I don't get that like, oh my gosh, and I'm taken aback. Of course, I feel for them and I feel it's terrible, but I do have the ability to really sit with them and allow them to feel safe. So I guess that's why I prefer that. So it's a long answer to my mediumship
No, no,
question.
it's a great answer. Thank you so much, Chris. And a question as well is group healing something which is a good option? I don't know how it goes, but for instance, for some people, having them sharing experiences can be a plus. Is it
Yes,
something?
absolutely. Because you are already energetically joining. Like when I mentioned about cords attaching. So you have now attached cords by a group. You're all attached now. And you're choosing to heal. So you're raising each other's vibration. That's why oftentimes you feel, even if it's just a little bit better, it still counts because you've done something for yourself, for others to be present in this manner. So I believe group healings can be amazing, especially when well facilitated.
Okay, this is fantastic. And do you do some group healing sessions, for instance, online as well? I mean,
I don't, but I believe I will. What happens for me in my work is people reach out to me and they ask me, "Do you do this?" For example, someone asked me if I teach spiritual development classes, and at the time I didn't, and I said, my answer was no, and she said, "Well, could you teach?" And I said, "Sure, I guess I could. I've been doing this long enough. Why not?" So I started developing like a plan. My business background, I got all PowerPoint presentations in my classes, and I really help people learn. So that's how I started becoming a teacher, a spiritual educator, helping people connect to their gifts, helping people evolve in their where they're at. My current class I'm actually teaching is up level your intuition. So no matter where you're at, doesn't matter, you're still gonna up level. And that's where a lot of people are really connecting with. So as far as group sessions, I think it would take someone basically saying, "Oh, I got a bunch of us, and I'd love for us to do this," and I'd be like, "Sure, let's do it." It's just how my work has evolved. So I think I just support that model that the universe seemed to create for me.
it's wonderful. And so for the moment, what you do is more, I mean, in physical, yeah? I mean, in rooms, people come to you or yeah, or this.
I do both. I'm in my office right now, so people do visit me in my office. And I also do, I would say most of my readings, my healings, my sessions are online, and my teaching classes are online via Zoom.
Yeah, because
Because
today,
energy travels everywhere. There's no
exactly. I
block.
mean, you can, everybody in this planet, today just the connection is so easy, and in a
Yes.
way, what brings people together is the how you say, the common the common energies, the common history, and already listening to other people's stories. It's so it's so powerful just to share. I'm a life coach, and for instance, I run workshops about procrastination,
Oh,
like
yeah.
4-week programs. And then, when you've got like 6 people and everybody start and, sharing, and it's like for everybody else, just already to listen to this is wow, and understand, and they find some similar aspects. So actually, it goes quicker, it goes to a higher level, and it removes some feelings of guilt or shame, things, because
Yes.
if not, we think we are alone, to have experienced something. And then, so I just mentioned it because I could see the power of this. And when I listened to you talking, Chris, I could imagine people online in the group, and,
Yeah, no, I
listen.
appreciate it. It was even as you say that, I could already like feel into what that would look like. If we're talking about procrastination, because that's an element of self-sabotage, there's going to be a trauma response tied to that. So if you have a fear-based trauma response, you've been criticized, so you're not going to want to do things for fear of being criticized. There's your procrastination tied to your trauma response. So how do we then heal
Exactly.
the energy around that so you feel more safe? So it's really great. I could see it happening too. So, like I said, I try not to force anything in this work, because then I think I just get into that business mode, overthinking. Because I do have an A-type personality and I am a bit of a perfectionist, but I've also learned to be more graceful in this and just allow things to be as they are meant to be and come as they are meant to come and not overthink.
Absolutely. And you see, if I may say, I had the same, again, the same perfectionist tendencies, and now I'm really letting go. But
Yeah.
sometimes a conversation, something, and we think, oh yeah, actually this could be interesting. And again, it's come from us. It's no, it's just sometimes, and this idea of free will, deciding
Yeah.
what we want to do and what we are called to do, you know, particularly when it's about helping people. For me, it's like, wow, so, and
Yeah.
look, thank you so much, Chris. And is there anything you would like to talk about now? Or for instance, tips you would have for our listeners, for instance, who have issues, just anything which comes up, Chris?
One thing I like to tell people, and I say this also having personal experience with this, is that healing does take time from an energetic standpoint. Because if, like me, I like to heal yesterday. I didn't want to take time. I wanted to feel better as fast as I could, but your energy has to align. So what I mean by that is, I like to use the example of when people do diets and they do very extreme diets, and why statistically, if they lose a lot of weight, they will likely gain it back within the next year. Energetically speaking, their energy is not at that and level. So the body then kind of has this rubber band effect energetically to go back to what it's used to. So that's just one example, but it could be used for anything. Procrastination is another example. It's just really having the patience with the process. It doesn't mean it won't be quick. It just might not be as fast as one wants, because when we want to feel better, we kind of want like that magic pill or that magic drink. Can I just be this version of myself? But depending on what your wants and your goals are, they're going to take a little longer. But I can say from my own experience, as much as I wanted to heal so fast, it's because I didn't want to be scared of my parents anymore. I just didn't want that fear. I wanted to feel strong. I wanted to feel empowered. But I recognized my energy needed to match that. I wasn't there yet because I was still scared. So I had to train my nervous system how not to be scared of something that wasn't a physical threat anymore.
Absolutely, so powerful. And when you mentioned, for instance, now about, for instance, extreme diets, and one thing we always have to remember is that is the why. Why do we do something? You know, is it because of external pressure? Because some other people want us to be like that? Or is it, you know, for instance, to have a better health, you know,
Yeah.
to live a better life? And then when we really look not at just this result, but why do we do this? For me, one of the secrets, I mean, it's not a secret, but it's really to enjoy the process, to enjoy every moment, to
Yes.
celebrate every little victory. Oh, okay, I lost pounds. Okay, it's great. And not to put undue pressure on ourselves, because then what happens is that we are always being stuck in a situation of lack. We are not there yet, and insatisfaction, instead of just letting go and enjoying every step.
That'd be a great book for you to write. What is your why?
But is why, well, obviously, you see Simon Sinek, he wrote a big, he had a really nice, you know, TEDx about this. But for me, the why, I mean, in procrastination, in everything.
Yeah,
When,
anything. I think it's
when we
great.
go to the root, all of a
Yeah,
sudden it becomes clear. It's like,
it does.
so, and Chris, when people want to contact you, work with you, what's the best way to contact you?
My website's the best way to connect with me, which is my name. It's chriswaskow.com.
Okay, and obviously this will be, you know, all your details would be under the YouTube
Thank you.
video. So I really want to thank you so much. It's been a fantastic, you
Yeah,
know,
thank you.
conversation, and I'm sure we you know, there will be others. I don't think it's the last time, because there's so much to talk about. That thank you so much for your time and being with us today, Chris.
Thank you very much, Daniel. This has been great.
And thank you for all the auditors to listen to this podcast. And any comments, please let us know. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.